Hello, and welcome back. In this video, we'll discuss everything you need to know about fields in ServiceNow. A table contains many fields, each with different field types, such as free-form text fields, or string fields, choice fields, integer fields, etc. Each field can also take on a number of properties, such as calculated fields, which can have logic applied to them in order to calculate their values, field attributes, which add filters, restrictions on fields, and special UI attributes, default values, where a default value can be provided for a specific field, and dictionary overrides, which we'll discuss later on. In the screenshot to the right, we see a list of fields in the incident table displaying their column label, field type, and reference if one exists. We'll explore this page more in depth shortly. Let's now cover some of the most important field types in ServiceNow. There are string fields, date fields, time fields, choice fields, true-false fields, list fields, HTML fields, script fields, and reference fields, which are so important they get their own slide. Reference fields are important since they reference other tables within the database, providing a relationship among records. Reference fields play an important part in the structure of a database. Since ServiceNow uses MySQL, which is a relational database management system, references, or the relationships, are the backbone of the database. References are everywhere in the system. Almost every table in ServiceNow has reference fields, which relate to other tables. For example, the incident table has a reference field to the user table, which is used to hold a caller value. Because this is a reference field, a user can only populate a caller on the incident form if that caller exists in the user table. Reference fields store the related record's sysid as opposed to, say, the name of the caller. Even though the caller name may appear in the list or form view of the incident, the sysid of the user's record is what is actually stored in the database. In the screenshot to the right, we can see the location reference field on an incident. Note the magnifying glass and information icon. We also have a picture of the Show Field pop-up box. This pop-up tells us some important information about the caller field. First, it tells us that it's a part of the incident table and that the field name is actually caller_ID, even though the field label is just caller. It also tells us the type, which is reference, and then tells us which table it references, in this case, sysuser. It has a max length of 32 characters. It also has a dependent property and an attribute, which we'll discuss later on in this video. Now, let's take a look at fields in ServiceNow. First, I'd like to show you a quick and easy way to access information about a field from a form view. As long as we have the admin role, we can right-click a field label and select Show Field. This will show the pop-up box we covered in the last slide, which shows us all kinds of useful information. I'll use this method for quick access to field information throughout the rest of this course. Each record in the sys dictionary table represents an individual field on a table. This record holds the configuration information for the field. To modify a field, we can access this record by either right-clicking a field on a form and going to Configure Dictionary, or by clicking the Form context menu or List Column context menu and going to Configure, Table, and then selecting the field. We can also access this record by going directly into the SYS dictionary table filtering by a table, and then filtering by the field name. Let's first access the category field. Here we can see that this is a part of the incident table and has a field type of string. The column label is category with a capital C, and the column name is category in all lowercase. There is a max limit of 40 characters per category. We also have a read-only checkbox and a mandatory checkbox. Although this may look like where you should go to make a field read-only or mandatory, 99% of the time you should make a field read-only or mandatory through UI policies as opposed to within the field's dictionary entry. We also have a display checkbox and attributes field, which we'll review in a bit. Since this field is a choice field, we see the choice list specifications section. Here, we can specify if none should be shown and also select a choice table if one exists. There is the dependent field section, which we'll go over in a bit, a calculated value section, where a value would be calculated by the system, and also a default value. So if the user doesn't provide an initial value, the field will be populated with a default value. Finally, there are related lists, which show access controls involved with this field, the choices that are used for this category field. These correlate to the selections in our form view. We also have field attributes and any labels associated with this field. Now let's go back and access the Assigned To fields data entry. Here we see that this field is actually a part of the task table, but because incident extends task, we see this field in the incidents list. We also see that the field type is a reference. This field references the SYS user table, so a user filling out this field can enter a person who is within the SYS user table. Under the reference qualifier section, you can see that someone filling out this form can only select SYS users who have a role of ITIL. This field also has a dependent field. The Assigned To field is dependent on the assignment group field. We'll take a look at an example of this next. We also see dictionary overrides. Since this field is a part of the task table, and there are tables other than the incident table that extend the task table, we can provide overrides for other tables. Again, if this doesn't make sense now, don't worry. We'll also cover this later on in this video. Let's now go back to dependent fields. In order to understand the dependent field, let's take a quick look at the Assigned To field in the form view. The Assigned To field is dependent on the assignment group. If an assignment group is not selected, then we can select any user that fits the reference qualifiers. In this case, any user in the SYS user table with an ITIL role. However, if we select an assignment group first, then we can only select users who are a part of that specific assignment group. In this example, Businessman Bob is not a part of the network group, so we cannot select him. We can also add fields to a table within the table page. Let's go back to the table page and add a string field called alternate ID. We'll set a character limit of 8 and save the form. Now we'll navigate into the field's dictionary entry and set a default value of none. Now when we create a new incident record, we see an alternate ID of none. Next, let's go over dictionary overrides with an example. Since the incident table extends the task table, we're going to create a new field on the task table. We'll create a field called task test and set the field type to string. We'll give it a limit of 40 and submit the form. Now we'll navigate into the form and provide a default value of task and update the record. Before we go into the incident form, I'd like to show you the change request form, since the table change request extends the task table just like the incident table does. So if we configure the form layout and add task test to the change request form, we'll see our default value of task here. Now let's go into the incident form and add our newly created field to the incident table. Again, we see the default value of task. So we can see that since we created a field on the task table, and since the change request and incident table both extend the task table, they inherit our newly created task field, task test. Now let's say we would like the default value of task test to be incident instead of task only when we're on the incident table. Well, we can do just that with a dictionary override. We'll right-click the field and go to Configure Dictionary. We'll scroll down to Dictionary Overrides and click the New button. Now we'll select the incident table and check the Override Default Value button and give a value of incident. We'll also check the Override Read-Only box and check Read-Only. Now we'll submit the form and go back into the incident form view. Here we see our newly modified field with a value of incident and the read-only property applied. Since we made this modification to the incident table, the change request table will still show a default value of task. Now we'll take a look at what the display field does. On the incident form, we know that the caller field is a reference to the sysuser table. If we start typing businessman Bob's name, we'll get an autocomplete box. We can see the value that is being populated here is the user's full name field on the sys user table, which is the first name plus last name. We can change what is displayed here by going into the sys user table and setting the display to true for another field. To do this, we'll navigate to the sys user table and go to Configure Table. Let's change the sys user display field to username instead of full name. We'll find the username field and set the display field to a value of true. Now if we navigate back to the incident form, we will see the usernames instead of full names. This is what the display field is used for. Now we'll cover attributes. Attributes are mainly used on reference fields, but have all kinds of applications. For the purposes of this example, let's say we want to add the first name field as another column in the caller's autocomplete box, so we have more information than just the username. This can be done with an attribute. Let's right-click the caller field and go to Configure Dictionary. We'll scroll down to the attributes related list and click New. First, we'll search for the reference autocompleter columns and select it. Now we'll provide the field name we'd like to add in the value field. In this case, the first name field. We'll submit this record, and now when we go back into the incident form view, we'll see the first name next to the username when we type in a user. If you'd like to know more about the hundreds of attributes in the system, I recommend looking over the ServiceNow documentation. In the last part of this video, we'll cover number maintenance. If we go into a new incident, we see that the number field is pre-populated with a string that always starts with INC and is followed by 7 digits. There are many tables in ServiceNow that have a very similar number field. We can edit and create new number fields by going into the Number Maintenance module. To find the incident number, we'll search by the prefix of INC and navigate into the record. We can see that there are 7 digits to represent the incident numbers with a starting number of 10,000. So the first incident on this table should be INC 00100000. Since 10,000 is the starting number, but is only 5 digits, we pad the beginning of the number until we get a total length of 7 digits. Finally, we prepend the number with INC. We can edit the number of digits or even change the starting number. In the related links, there is a Show Counter link, which will take us to the current counter that is being used for the incident table. This shows us that if we were to create a new incident, the next number would be 10,047. We can reset this here if we'd like. Finally, we can also access this information if we go back to the Incident List view and navigate to Configure Table. Now we'll click on the Controls tab, and we can see that this information is displayed here for us as well.